Hey guys, it's Ann Yorks from the Flower Box, and I'm excited to bring you a really fun football cookie tutorial today. We're going to take a look at how to make a football, of course. Then we're also going to make a football player, a jersey using royal icing transfers. Then I'll show you two quick and easy stenciled cookies for both the field and tailgates and touchdowns. And then after that, I'll show you how to make a helmet cookie. Now, I'm using blue and white because they're my favorite team colors, but you can make these cookies with your own team spirit by using your team colors. Plus, with this tutorial, I've created a blog post to give extra tips on how to make these cookies, including icing colors, yield, what cutters I'm using, and don't forget we also have a kit to go with it. That kit has the essential cutters and stencils, plus one of those food doodler markers that you can use to make these cookies. So, let's cookie it up. Let's kick this off with the star of the show, the football. I am using my favorite football cookie cutter. I just love the size of this cutter because it allows room for the laces and the white stripes. So I'm freehanding my outline using brown icing and tip number 2, but you can use the free template online if you need help setting off those icing areas. And then I'm just gonna flood in that base icing with my brown flood color. And I'll wiggle the icing into place just to get into all the nooks and crannies. Now you could leave it just brown like footballs usually look, but I'm gonna add some wet on wet polka dots just to make these footballs look a little extra fun. I'll let that icing dry for at least an hour before I go in and flood the white stripes. And again, I'm using a tipless bag with flood icing. It's about a 10-second icing. And I'm just gonna tap that icing into place. Now we are gonna outline that area, so I don't feel like I have to be too careful, but that scribe definitely comes in pretty handy when you're trying to get the icing into the little corners where your tipless bag might not reach. Once that has time to dry, I'll pipe those outlines, and I'm just going along the seams with a tip number 2. Again, that's my piping icing. It's a little bit thicker. If you see that you have a little bit of a mispipe like I do on the left here, I just let that icing dry for about 15 minutes. It has a little bit of a crust to it, and I'm gonna use my scribe, and it literally just kind of breaks off and picks off because it hasn't fully set. I'll clean it up and then I'll repipe, and it just gives a cleaner finish to my football. Now I'm ready for tip number 44. That nice wide stripe is made so easy using tip number 44. And then I'm gonna follow the cookie to add those 5 laces. And I have a super cute football cookie. There's even room there to personalize it if you wanted to. Let's jump to the football player. This is probably the feature cookie in this set. You can see I did trace a yellow outline just to guide piping that helmet, and you can find that template on the blog post on flowerboxbakery.com. So I'm gonna flood in the helmet, and then I'm gonna go back in and flood in the player's face. And I started off using the flesh tone from Chef Master, and I added a little bit of Buckeye Brown just to get a deeper skin tone. So you can create a variety of skin tones with your icing. Then I'll let all the icing dry for at least an hour, and I'll go back in and pipe that black outline between the helmet and the face. I'll add the gray accent at the top of the helmet, and then again I'm using tip number 44. That's actually in the football kit to pipe that wide blue stripe on the top of the helmet. Now it's time to add the football helmet grill, and I'm just freehanding that, but again, if it's helpful to have a guide, you can use the template from the blog post. Sometimes eyes can be a little tricky, and for these I'm using my flood icing. I'll start with a base of black, and I made these eyes pretty big. I like the look of that because I'm going to add eye black before we're done with this cookie. And then while that black is still wet, I'm gonna add a tiny dot of white flood icing. And that catch light just kind of brings the face to life. Then I'm gonna finish off the details on the face. I'll add a smile. I'll add the nose. I'm using flood icing to keep that nice and rounded. And then I'll size my black down to tip number 1.5 to do the eyebrows. The only thing left to do is the eye black, and I'm going to use a food doodler just to keep that nice and flat against the face. It's so important to let that icing dry for about 6 hours before you do the eye black. Sometimes I'll even let the cookie dry and come back and do that before I bag them up. Otherwise, you could possibly poke that tip of the marker through your icing, so definitely let that face dry for at least 6 hours before you write on it with a marker. And then there you have it. You have a super cute football player face. He's just awesome looking. Now I'm going to show you how to make these so you can make these jerseys. I like to make royal icing transfers, and you can download this transfer sheet on the blog post for this tutorial. So I'm going to outline the numbers using my gray icing. I like to have an accent color when I do the jersey numbers. And then I'm just going to go back in and flood those numbers in with my icing. Now I'll make these the day that I make my icing. I like to make my icing the day before I decorate and let these dry overnight. If you don't let them dry all the way, they can not be dry enough to peel off the paper. So then I'm just gonna loosen it up and peel that number back, and they really just peel off the parchment paper, and they're ready to go on the cookie. So I'll start the jersey by piping a V at the collar, and then I'll outline the rest of the jersey. And I'm flooding in with my blue icing color. I'm actually using Chef Master Navy Blue. And once that's all flooded in while it's still wet, I'm gonna add those numbers onto the jersey. And I try to get them placed where I want them to go, but if I need to nudge them into place, the SCRIBE is super helpful for that. So now that the numbers are on, I can outline and flood the collar and the cuff. Once those are outlined, I'm gonna flood in, and I did put a tip number 1 on my white flood icing just to keep the flow of the icing under control. Now I'm adding a gray accent along the seams of those areas, and I'm gonna pipe with my white piping icing just a couple details. And just those few pipe details really make that cookie look good, but doesn't add too much work to it. Now let's jump to one of my favorite cookies to make. I'm gonna make this field cookie, and the key to making this cookie successful is spreading the icing with the lines and not against the lines. So I'm gonna generously spread stiff white icing onto the cookie surface. Once I have good coverage, I'm actually gonna swipe the scraper one more time to remove the excess and then peel back. Now that cookie looks cute enough on its own, but if you want to take it to the next level, you can definitely use black icing with a number 1 tip and pipe a fun football play, and that just makes it look super cute. So I'm just freehanding this. I looked up a couple plays online. I don't know much about football plays, but this is what I found, and it looks really cute on the cookie. So you can come up with what you want, and piping those little X's and O's takes a little bit of time, but it certainly pays off. Okay, are you ready for another quick and easy football cookie? Let's stencil this tailgates, touchdowns, and tackles cookie. I'm gonna use my anchor finger at the top there and just bring that blue icing down. Again, I just want really good coverage And then once I have all the stencil covered, I'm just gonna peel it back to remove the pattern. In real time, this cookie probably takes me 1 minute to do, which is awesome for cookie decorating. So I'm gonna jazz this one up a little bit by piping not just the blue outline, I'm using a tip number 2 for the blue outline, but I'm gonna add a second line as well. So I'm gonna go back in and outline in brown. And just that little detail makes this cookie a lot more interesting, and yet it's still pretty quick and easy. This stencil also will just fit on the football. So let me show you a quick look at that as well. And I just stenciled that on there. Now I'm using that wide tip number 44 to add the white stripes. And I can squeak in just a little bit of laces at the top as well. So it's always fun when you can use your stencil on more than one cookie shape. Okay, we're doing our last cookie from this set, and this is the helmet cookie. I'm actually gonna keep this one pretty simple because we've spent a lot of time decorating all those other cookies, but you could even use your royal icing transfer numbers on this cookie if you wanted to personalize it for your team. But I'm gonna do a wet on wet blue line. So I outlined in white with my tip number 2, flooded it in with the white, and now I'm going back in with my tipless bag just to add that blue stripe on the helmet. That's what Penn State is famous for, so that's how I always decorate my helmet cookies. Then I'm gonna add some gray details, and this cookie looks awesome. There's still room up at the top if you wanted to personalize it with a name or a team or even a player's number. I hope you enjoyed watching this tutorial and got some ideas for making football treats for your next tailgate or team party. Don't forget to check out the blog post for the free templates and extra tips on icing and baking. And be sure to check out that football cookie decorating kit for the essential cutters and stencils that you need to make these cookies. Post comments below. I'd love to help you with any questions that you might have, and I would be so flattered if you recreated these cookies. So be sure to hashtag flowerboxbakery or tag us on Instagram and Facebook so we can see what you're making. Thanks for watching, and happy decorating!